All right, everyone. The North Korean government has threatened merciless retaliation against the Israelis if they interfere on the peninsula. This comes in the wake of the Israeli state, specifically I believe their defense minister saying, "Oh, well, North Korea it's destabilizing, human rights violations and so forth." Now, I thought this was surreal. I know a lot of people in the United States are like, oh, Israel, greatest ally beyond reproach, never does anything wrong, the greatest democracy of all time, only democracy in its region. And North Korea is like, oh, it's evil, commies and stuff. And some people on the left, like the flip side, they're like, oh, Israel, it's just a bunch of imperialism and evil, and they build walls, and oh, we can't have walls because that's evil. No one should defend their culture. And North Korea, oh, they're just misunderstood. We should leave them alone. We shouldn't even sanction them, let them do what they want. It's all very strange, all very surreal. Here are my thoughts. Here you have the two rogue nuclear states of the world that haven't signed the NPT diplomatically sparring with one another. Now, is either of these states actually going to end up in an armed conflict of one sort or another with the other? No, it would be impossible for that to actually occur. Neither of these states, neither the North Koreans nor the Israelis, have the projective force necessary to actually directly attack one another. I can think of one way they could pull it off would be with long-ranged missiles. You see, the problem is, if they were to trade missile fire, you realize how many nations those missiles would be going over? I don't think they'd be very happy about that fact. Pretty sure they'd have to go over China. That would be a sticking point. I think, though, they would probably fly over Pakistan, at least the northern tip of it. They'd probably have to fly over numerous nations that wouldn't be too kindly towards the idea. So at the end of the day, they're not actually going to fight. But it is always funny when Israel is calling out another nation for human rights violations and imperialism and things of that nature. I think it was Avigdor whatever the heck his name is. I can't even pronounce his last name fully. Israel doesn't have a great track record when it comes to these things. North Korea's may be worse, but neither of these nations are exactly top tier when it comes to human rights and respecting their neighbors. In fact, I've often drawn a comparison between the two of them. That is that Israel is to the U.S. as North Korea is to China and Iran is to Russia. That is, all three of these main states have their sort of little rogue site that isn't part of their nation, but ultimately is sort of a waste paper basket absorbing money and in return giving intel or doing tests that the nation itself wouldn't be party to. So you have a situation where the U.S., for instance, had banned nuke testing. And all of a sudden there was a nuke test between the Israelis in partnership with the South Africans. And I've thought that might have actually been a rogue U.S. nuclear test that was carried out specifically by a state that had not actually signed the NPT. When North Korea advances its programs, China may indeed be using it the same way, or maybe did at one point, and now they fully have gone rogue. I think Israel in many ways risks doing the same thing and alienating the United States because it becomes more and more difficult in a diplomatic sense to defend their actions, even among the total neocons and neoliberals that usually they're like gung-ho fly the Star of David, and they don't care about the United States. They're actually more pro-Israel, and some of them are dual citizens. Some of these people even have to sort of back up. You saw it even with Obama. That's one of the few things he ever did that I gave him credit for, is compared to past presidents, he was actually willing to criticize the state of Israel at least a little bit. Trump has done the same, although he sort of makes amends and he goes pro-Israel. It's difficult to tell because of his sort of chaos strategy what his real feelings on the situation are. I know a lot of people want to say, oh, well, Kushner is Jewish, and so through that he's being controlled by Zionists or something. That remains to be seen. As we saw with his election strategy, basically any proposal that he makes, you could invert it completely, find his real view, and it's just nothing more than chaos. He's done this multiple times. It's one of the problems with suggesting that he's gone back on a campaign promise. Wall aside, because that's the congressional GOP. Or deportations aside, he did try that. The judiciary stepped in his way. It can be difficult sometimes, honestly, to tell what his actual views are on some issues. This is really great as a campaign strategy. I'm not sure it has rolled over into being the president of the United States quite as well, but it does seem to be working, I guess, with China, so that's the silver lining to an otherwise maybe kind of stormy-looking cloud. But for North Korea and Israel to jab each other on human rights or abusing other states, can you imagine something so surreal? We're certainly in the best timeline. Uh, Israel and North Korea are trading diplomatic jabs right now, and pretending there's the possibility that they would actually attack one another. It would be difficult for nations with relatively small, more localized naval presences to do so. I suppose the North Koreans, in theory, could sail a bunch of submarines into the Mediterranean to attack the Israelis. I'm not sure how that would work, since I would assume they would have to go through the Suez Canal. I think the Egyptians might notice their presence and attack them if they tried. The Israelis would have to sail halfway around the world to fire some short-range missiles at North Korea, and their navy would be fairly vulnerable in such a situation since they don't have an aircraft carrier to provide air cover. It's not going to happen. There were some people yesterday flipping out about this, saying, "Oh, it's Armageddon, the end times are upon us. It's a fulfillment of the prophecy, Israel will get nuked, and then World War III will begin, and the Antichrist will come, and then Jesus will come," and all this stuff. It's not going to happen. They don't have the physical capability to pull it off. They both have the ability to lob missiles at one another, but they'd perturb so many other states in so doing that, they'd get curb stomped. It wouldn't matter if China kinda sorta will back North Korea occasionally, kinda sorta. It doesn't matter that the United States generally backs Israel. Nobody else is going to get involved. If something that egregious were to happen, nobody else would defend them. They would just sit back and say, "Okay, you go ahead and attack each other with WMDs or whatever. We're not getting involved in this situation. You're going to go it alone on this one for this time." That'd be funny. But yeah, for little Avigdor there to talk about human rights violations and destabilizing world peace and being diplomatically problematic, that's a really funny joke, Avigdor. Yeah, considering the reputation that your nation has, again, with regards to the West Bank or incursions into Syria, where you ignore ISIS. Just like it's funny when the North Koreans say that somebody else is being abusive. It's like, yeah, all that artillery you've got lined up on the DMZ, it's strictly defensive. Except for those times that you shelled some islands and killed a bunch of civilians. Or the time that you tried to infiltrate South Korea to kill their president, I think back in the 70s. Or the time that you captured a U.S. ship that wasn't involved in combat. Or all the times you detain U.S. citizens or Western citizens in general. Yeah, it's a funny joke, but that's exactly what it is in both of these cases. For both of these nations, it's a joke. It's almost a self-satire. That's about all. Peace out.